You bring up the Ambassador Bridge. The Maroon family, they have donated to a Donald Trump super PAC $1 million. While you were in Congress back in the day, we found records from the 2010.
Wow, you found records that I got money from Matt Maroon.
Well, not just him, but from multiple members of the family.
Sure.
15 donations.
Sure.
Something has changed in the way Canadian anchors are interviewing Pete Hoekstra, and it wouldn't be long before he started refusing to give interviews to Canadian media. Canadian journalists are no longer accepting carefully rehearsed talking points. They're asking tougher questions, demanding clear answers, and refusing to move on when those answers don't make sense. This may have been his most uncomfortable interview yet. When Mackenzie Gray confronted Hoekstra about reports of campaign donations linked to the owners of the Ambassador Bridge and questioned whether those connections had influenced the continued delay of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, the interview immediately took a different turn. What started as a routine conversation quickly became a relentless examination of accountability, transparency, and the Trump administration's approach to Canada. If there was ever an interview that showed just how difficult Washington's message has become north of the border, this was it. Let's watch what happened.
Bring up the Ambassador Bridge. The Maroon family, they have donated to a Donald Trump super PAC $1 million. While you were in Congress back in the day, we found records from the 2010.
Wow, you found records that I got money from Matt Maroon.
Well, not just him, but from multiple members of the family.
Sure.
15 donations.
Sure.
Are you doing this, is the administration doing this because of the donations you received from the Maroon family?
Absolutely not. There's legitimate issues here that we're resolving. The bridge was not opened when it was announced a couple of weeks ago by mutual agreement of the Canadian government and the U.S. government. And that statement came out. We're working through the issues. And no, it has nothing to do with the Maroons.
Nothing.
No. So I took, I don't know how familiar you are with American financing of campaigns, okay? But the Maroons operate a significant business in the United States of America. And in the United States, companies that are involved in those kinds of businesses donate to all kinds of campaigns. I've not gone back and taken a look at who they've all donated to, but I know that they donate to Republicans and Democrats. And my district was on the west side of the state. I'm about as, other than going up into the UP, I'm about as far away from the Ambassador Bridge as you can get. In Michigan, you go from Detroit, and when you hit Lake Michigan, that's where my congressional district was. But yes, they contributed to my campaign. They contributed to my governor's campaign. So yes.
And it's got them nothing then?
Well, it got them nothing.
Well, but
this
is
how our campaign system works.
No, I understand
okay?
that, but you bring up the bridge, the
but
Ambassador
no, this
Bridge,
policy
in relation to the Gordie Howe Bridge, and saying that it's going to take away revenue from the Ambassador Bridge, and that is a part of the reason why you don't want the Gordie Howe Bridge open right now.
No, I didn't say that. Okay, you're putting words
into
my mouth.
Well, then please clarify.
What's that?
Yeah, clarify.
I said that part of the revenue that will go and move over to the Gordie Howe Bridge is revenue that is coming from the Detroit corridor, crossing corridor right now, which are two entities, the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel and a bridge, which happens to be the Ambassador Bridge, which is the which is the Ambassador Bridge, which is opened by the Maroons. And so yes, if you're going, most likely, because it's not anticipated that the opening of a new bridge is going to create a whole new stream of traffic crossing the Detroit River. The revenue for the Gordie Howe Bridge is going to come from one of two places, the tunnel or the bridge, the current bridge.
Mackenzie Gray then turned to an issue that has sparked growing public debate: campaign donations. Referring to public records, he pointed to donations from members of the family that owns the Ambassador Bridge to Donald Trump, as well as to Hoekstra's previous congressional campaigns, before asking the question directly. Could those political donations have played any role in the administration's handling of the Gordie Howe International Bridge? It was an uncomfortable question that immediately shifted the conversation from infrastructure to accountability. Pete Hoekstra appeared visibly unsettled by the confrontation, but as expected, he strongly denied there was any connection, insisting the negotiations were based only on legitimate operational concerns. But Gray didn't simply accept that answer. He continued pressing the issue, forcing Pete Hoekstra to defend both the administration's position and the appearance of the relationships at the center of the controversy. It quickly became the defining moment of the entire interview.
We've heard from the Prime Minister, the reason from the Canadian side at least, the why it's not open, is that the Americans have not wanted it open. There's technicalities associated with issues there. Can you explain the issues that you guys have with the Gordie Howe Bridge right now?
There's just some technicalities to work out. The deal that was signed, 15 years ago, really isn't operational in today's environment. The bridge came in significantly over budget, was well delayed, so you have to go back and work out some of the parts of the agreement that are out there. We're talking with Mark Wiseman, we're talking with Dominic. Lutnick and I had a call with him this week. I'm optimistic that we can get these issues resolved relatively quickly and that soon the bridge will be open.
But what are the issues? I mean, it's fairly set up. We've got the agreements here that outline that Canada pays for the construction of the bridge, for the interchange, for the land in Michigan, for the land in Canada. American steel and aluminum and construction workers were used on the American side. What is the issue that you guys have?
The issue is exactly the management of the bridge. Canada's financing the bridge. It's like going and buying a home and you get a mortgage. Okay, the bank, at least in the U.S., the bank finances the purchase of the house, and at that point in time, the money is the owner of the house pays the money back. The bank, at the end of that, never says we paid for the bridge. You're financing the bridge, and so right now we're looking at two issues that concern control of the bridge, tariff setting, where the money flows. That's coming across the bridge, because we're not increasing volume on the bridge. All right, it's not like we've got this corridor on the Detroit River right now that has one bridge and has a tunnel. If you want to get from one side to the other, you use either the bridge or you use the tunnel. With the Gordie Howe Bridge coming online, it's not like, oh wow, we're going to see a 30-40% increase in traffic. Most likely it'll be the same traffic, and you're just changing the revenue stream from those two outlets to spreading it over three. So what's the revenue stream? Where does it go in those types of things?
Well, so you want the tolls to increase? You want money sooner? I've got the agreements here. It says
I've read the agreements.
No,
okay?
I know.
Big deal. I've read the agreements. We're working through those issues, and we'll see exactly where we come out.
On the mortgage point, the thing, though, for Michigan is that you've put no risk associated with this. If you had a mortgage and you didn't have to pay any payments and then you got to own 50% of the house later, that sounds like a good deal. I just don't understand what the issue is.
Exactly. Americans are paying for, actually, traffic going through that corridor is paid for revenue from the tunnel, which I understand is partially owned by the city of Windsor and partially owned by the city of Detroit. And it's paid for from revenue coming from the Ambassador Bridge, which is 100% an American-owned company.
The interview began with what seemed like a fairly routine question about the delayed opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, but it didn't take long for the conversation to become far more revealing. As Pete Hoekstra tried to explain the delay by pointing to technical issues and ongoing discussions between Ottawa and Washington, Mackenzie Gray refused to accept broad talking points. Instead, he repeatedly pushed for specific answers, asking exactly what was preventing a bridge that had already been completed from opening to the public. With every follow-up question, it became increasingly clear that the explanations being offered were not satisfying the interviewer and that the conversation was heading in a very different direction than Hoekstra had likely expected. Whether viewers agreed with every question or every answer, today's interview highlighted something that has become increasingly clear about Canada-US relations. Canadian journalists are asking tougher questions than ever before about the decisions affecting both countries, and they're showing little willingness to move on until they receive clear and direct explanations. For Pete Hoekstra, this interview was another reminder that representing Washington in Canada now means facing constant public scrutiny on issues ranging from trade and diplomacy to infrastructure and political accountability. Now we'd like to hear from you. Do you think Hoekstra answered the toughest questions about the Gordie Howe International Bridge? Or did today's interview leave Canadians with even more questions than before? If you enjoyed today's analysis, don't forget to subscribe to Canada Today, leave a like, and we'll see you in the next one.